My aspiration when I was a young teacher in Australia, and yes, I was very young once, was, I was teaching senior school, and I was teaching in a low socioeconomic area, and I was teaching boys who were like way taller and strappier than I was. And the principal actually said that, you're going to get eaten alive. And that was definitely not something that I wanted to happen to me. So what did I do? I mastered the art of engagement. And suddenly I had these senior school boys actually eating out of my hand. I then visited India just on a one-year sabbatical. I was teaching in a very prestigious school in Juhu. And I had 55 kids in my class, and I had to rank them and rate them. And I had to do everything that I knew intuitively as a teacher is completely wrong for their brains, for their spirit, for the emotional selves that they completely are. And I said, I'm going to come back and change the system of education in India. And so I went back to Australia, finished my education, and then I came back, and I didn't have the capital to start a high school. And so I went to my dad and I said, if you can give me a small loan, I will change the way India perceives education. And he said, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know, but give me a small loan and I will do it. So I started what my dad eventually gave me as a gift. I started with 30 lakhs, bought my first premise. And I really was clear that I didn't want the stress of paying back interest on the loan, because when you have that stress, financial stress, then what happens is you start taking shortcuts. You start doing what the customer wants rather than what the consumer needs. And in our case, the customer and the consumer are two very different beasts. The customer is the parent, but the consumer is the child. And I wanted to do everything that was right by the child. And then, as Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High sort of spread, my next aspiration was to be the most loved brand, which meant I had to do everything for the child. And so I did a workshop with this guy from Australia, and he asked me, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal? And I thought deeply about it. I said, I need to think deeply about this and come back to you. And then I started thinking about all the reasons why I became a teacher in the first place. And I sort of started saying that if you impact a child, you can actually impact the future, right? Because how you develop this human consciousness is how this human consciousness will go into the world and interact with the world. So I wanted to go from like a transactional form of learning to a transformational form of learning. So then my thoughts started turning to, what would my big, hairy, audacious goal be? It's only if I touch 1 billion lives and get them to start thinking, instead of competition, to think of collaboration, instead of thinking of consuming, to think about creating. Now, if we want to make this change, we're going to have to move to a system that does look at, hey, creating is more important than consuming. Because when you create is when you're in your state of flow, is when you are happy. When your heart is happy, when your spirit is happy, and when your mind is happy. So one of the things we don't realize when we're not teaching kids in any of our learning and education is the next economy is the attention economy. Whoever's attention you can get, the more valuable you will be. And the marketing world knows it. The tech app world knows it. The gaming world knows it. And none of this do we bring in as relevant learning in our schools. So we want to make sure that kids understand where they're going because of technology. And rather than resist it, because once upon a time we resisted the printing press, we said, no, we shouldn't give books to children. It will affect their memories. And so we're doing it all over again. No, don't go near the technology. It'll hurt you. Without looking at the fact that if we embrace technology and we teach kids how to use it for the right reasons, for meditation, for visualization, for learning, then, hey, we've suddenly got a force for good rather than a force for bad. So one of the sad facts because of this customer consumer bit is that kids who are young don't have power. They don't have choice. Schools would have changed hundreds of years ago if the child was choosing which school he wanted to go to. One of the things we don't realize that research tells us that man has a very high need for autonomy, agency, voice, and choice. And in schools, we've taken this all away from kids. We tell them when to sit, when to stand up, when to answer, when to be quiet, when they can eat. Everything. We control everything. So kids will start looking at control being from an outside force rather than an inside force. The future is all about self-directed learning. It's all about self-directed growth. And if we start giving the power back to kids and they start enjoying the process of learning because they have choice, voice, autonomy, then we're on a great way forward. We're actually almost destroying ourselves because we just need to give kids an abundant mindset. They don't have to operate from scarcity and they will live these wholesome, fulfilled, exciting, joyful, happy, loving, contributing, creating lives. Isn't that what we want for our kids? Isn't that what every parent should want for their kid? We know that by the power of using technology, we can 10x the learning, or even more than that. Teach not only the content that all schools are teaching, that every board stipulates must be taught. We can do that and build all the future skills. Teach kids about, emotional regulation, what it is, how to cope, how to deal with uncertainty, to give them these tools and strategies to control their brains and their thoughts and their ways of being. And we actually do it in half the amount of time that a conventional school takes. So Dreamtime is an Aboriginal concept. It is the story of how through our dreams, we created the world into being. It's a lot of what a lot of people are talking about right now, the Matrix and everything else, that are we living in a simulated universe? The basic belief is that our thoughts generate feelings, our feelings generate behavior, our behavior generates action, actions generate the outcome of our lives and what we experience. So Dreamtime is beautiful because it's an acronym for the pedagogical input and output. So just to give you an example, D stands for digitally driven as an input, and it stands for design thinkers as an output. R stands for relevant learning as an input, and it stands as reflective learning as an output, right? M stands for multidisciplinary as an input. It stands for moonshot thinking as an output. So, in terms of an acronym, it sits really well. In terms of conceptually, what it means is to give kids the power to think the thoughts that will serve them, that will keep them moving forward, that will help them become the best version of themselves. So what are those thoughts, and how do they control those thoughts, and how do they reframe negative thoughts? And so it's more about self-mastery than conquering the outside world, because if you actually conquer your inside world, your outside world is just going to be experienced as beautiful.